What's up, guys? So this is from Jenna Kunze. I hope I said that right. As more Alaskans continue to leave than arrive, here's why they're moving. So Alaska is losing its residents to the shithole known as Texas, the mediocre state known as Oregon, the greatest state in America, that's Washington, and the shithole known as Florida, where bougie motherfuckers from New York, they want to go to Florida for oranges. I just had to do that. And that's according to 2023 American Community Survey results, an annual demographic survey conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau. From 2022 to 2023, Alaska lost more residents than it gained, maintaining a trend that has existed for more than a decade. Though Alaska has long led the nation in annual population turnover, typically about 45,000 people move both into and out of the state annually, said Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development demographer Eric Sandberg. What has changed is that the number leaving is now consistently higher than the number coming in. About 35,800 residents left the state between 2022 and 2023, while only about 30,676 arrived. Data shows. Last year, these are all the fucking oil idiots. Last year, those leaving flocked in the highest numbers to Texas, which claimed roughly 4,688 Alaska residents in 2023, according to the data. Next, Oregon took in about 3,236 residents. Washington, the greatest state in America, absorbed about 398, and the state furthest from Alaska, Florida, where Norman Finkelstein goes to eat oranges. He likes oranges in Florida, claimed 2,280 of its former residents. The why is pretty simple, according to Sandberg. There are fewer people coming to the state, and those who are already here, a rapidly aging population, are leaving for things like retirement. That's what my dad did, and he moved to Seattle. Fewer job opportunities and an overall economic downturn, beginning with a statewide recession in the late 2010s, has kept what was once a dependable population boom of adults in their 20s and 30s. So I'm in my late 20s, almost in my early 30s. I'm in my late 20s, at a decline, Sandberg said. From 2015 to 2020, Alaska lost about 700 more people in their early 20s every year than it gained, according to Sandberg's research. I was one of the few people to go to Alaska in 2018 when I was in my early 20s. But, now I'm in my late 20s, and I'm looking to go to Washington, down to Seattle there. So there's generally been a pattern that we attract young people and older people leave more often than come. A high baby boomer population has lifted up that number of people leaving just by how many baby boomers we have approaching retirement age. Also, you have to take into account, this is me editorializing, that there's barely any jobs, right? Barely any jobs, and we'll go over here. There's barely any jobs. The public transit sucks. Alaska's not a walkable state. Anchorage is not a walkable city. There's too many crackheads. There's too many people suffering addiction, suffering mental illness, suffering unhoused. They're suffering homelessness, right? So Anchorage is a shithole. Thanks to leaders like my mom, who worked for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and who was active in her community council, and her inaction, thanks to my mom's inaction on how to get public transit, she fucking failed my generation, okay? There's no nice way to say it. My mom's generation, who grew up in Alaska, fucking failed my generation, and that's why so many people who were born in the 80s and 90s, and people who are millennials, born from 1980 to 1997, I can't speak for Generation Z, but my generation, those of us who were born from 1980 to 1997, which is when I was born, those of us who are millennials and they're from age 27 to age 44, that's why we're leaving for Seattle. That's why we're leaving for Tacoma, Bellevue, Edmonds, Woodinville. There's even people going to Bellingham, of all places. There's people going to Federal Way, to Kent, to Des Moines, That's why we're leaving South Central Alaska for Western Washington. There's people going to Kirkland. There's people going to Redmond. There's people going to Everett, to Snohomish, Stanwood. Even fucking Stanwood, son. And nobody wants to fucking live in Stanwood. It's all Seattle, dude. It's all Seattle. Everybody just wants to live in... Most people want to actually live in the city of Seattle instead of a shitty little suburb. So, and fuck the suburbs. It's Seattle all day, son. But here's another... And this is from Yarith Rosen, whose daughter went to school with my brother at Rogers Park in grade school. And I actually know Yarith Rosen. Oh, that's downtown Anchorage. That's by Lauren Holmes. By the way, Lauren Holmes' mom was my babysitter in the 90s and in the early 2000s. As Alaskans from different organizations convened at UAA to brainstorm the ways to reverse the state's continuing population outmigration, a leading state economist delivered some bad news. Dan Robinson, research chief at the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development, revealed that the latest data shows that Alaska has now had 12 consecutive years with more residents leaving than arriving. That is unprecedented, he said. This is not normal for us. It hasn't happened before, Robinson said on Thursday at the start of the two-day meeting. The longest prior streak was 4 years. Robinson spoke at a meeting organized by Zionist terrorist Mary Peltola, UAA's Institute of Social and Economic Research, the Zionist subversives from the Alaska Federation of Natives, and the liberal Zionists from the First Alaskans Institute. Yeah, they're all fucking Zionist cucks, and that's why Alaska fucking sucks. Nice rhyme there. Behind the outmigration statistics are specific patterns. The driver is not really the Alaskans who are leaving. In 2023, 40,924 people moved out of the state, a smaller total than in any year since 2010, according to the department's data. Rather, he said, it is the lack of people who are coming to Alaska. And here's why, guys. People like me, late 20s, early 30s, right? We go out of state. We move to Seattle. We move to Tacoma, to Bellevue, Everett. And we tell our relatives out of state, yeah, fuck Alaska. That place is a fucking shithole. It's a frozen wasteland. There's nothing to do up there. There's no professional football or professional soccer games to go to. There's no big scholars coming through for lectures. There's so many people there's hella people that are tweakers. They got hella tweakers up here. You know, hella people are fiending. Like, you walk down the street, hella people be asking you for like a lighter or for a cigarette or whatever. And it's like, no, dude, I don't participate with that. I'm a healthy dude. You know, I want to be a professional athlete, you know? And so us millennials, us people from age 27 to 44 who go down to Seattle or Bellevue or Tacoma, we go down there and, dude, when our cousins ask us, dude, why'd you leave Alaska? Oh, you tell them, oh, that place is a shithole. It's a frozen wasteland. Like, you got all these idiotic right-wingers from fucking Texas and Florida. You know, you got all these idiotic, dirty Southerners from, like, fucking Louisiana, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. All these broke, corrupt, oil money motherfuckers from Texas and Louisiana. All these Mormon degenerates from fucking Utah and Idaho, especially if you go out to South Anchorage, to Rabbit Creek, and to Bear Valley, and a part of Huffman, you know, where I actually grew up on the corner of Rabbit Creek and Elmore, like the legit corner of Rabbit Creek and Elmore. I can show you that on Google Earth. But dude, Alaska's a shithole. Like, minimum wage up here is barely nothing, right? Because this fucking state's a Republican shithole. And this is not an endorsement of the Democrats. I fucking hate the Zionist Democrats as well. Especially Suzanne LaFrance, who wants to buy Zionist spyware cobwebs and who has a record of police brutality as a mayor. But no, dude, we go back down to Seattle. We fly down to Seattle on Delta and end up in either Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue, or Everett, or even sometimes Olympia if you're a dumbass. Although I think Seattle's the best city in North America, the greatest city in North America, and I know something about great cities because I have family in Mecca. So, so we go down to Seattle, or the Seattle area, the Puget Sound area, and we tell our cousins, dude, Alaska's a shithole, don't go up there. So then our cousins won't go to Alaska, they'll stay in Washington, or they'll move back to their country's origin. And yeah, that's basically what it is, man. So less is known about them than about neighbors moving away, right? It's harder to tell stories about the people who don't come, he said, because they've been dissuaded by their cousins who moved down from Alaska, or their siblings, or their uncles or aunties who moved down from Alaska, right? Particularly important is the age of those who are not coming to Alaska, Robinson said. Historically, our biggest net gain have been people in the second half of their 20s and 30s. So my age, right? I'm in my late 20s. I'm 27. And part of that is because of the war criminals in the military, and part of that is because Alaska is an adventurous kind of place. Yeah, a fucking frontier mine shithole. Added to the lack of new young adult Alaskans is a continued phenomenon of college-age Alaskans who leave state to attend school in the lower 48, usually Washington, Oregon, or California. He said the result is less economic vitality. It's not a healthy sign. So people are, instead of staying up here for college, they're going down to UW. They're going down to Oregon. They're going to Seattle U. They're going to Portland State. They're going to San Jose State, to Cal Poly, UC Davis, Sacramento State, San Diego State, Long Beach State, Cal State Northridge. And there's nobody going to UAA. There's nobody going to UAF, UAS, right? So people my cousin's age, so I did a year of college at Willamette U in Oregon. My baby cousin, my mom's youngest nephew, he moved out, did a semester at the shithole known as Texas A&M, then transferred to UMass, right? So again, college-age people, my cousin's age, are leaving Alaska for places like, to go to school in places like Washington, Oregon, California. And then people my age, late 20s, early 30s, so 27 to about, it's really late 20s and 30s, so 27 to 39, we're not arriving to Alaska. We're not moving to Alaska. Instead, we're going to Washington, Oregon, and California, right? So even before the current outmigration started, Alaska's population ebbs and flows were the subject of much study. Those populations have been aided by a uniquely Alaskan institution, the Zionist Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend. Fuck the PFD. I'll fucking give up my fucking PFD. That's dirty Zionist money, son. Receipt of that annual payout is a metric frequently used to define Alaska residency. Mike Jones, an assistant economics professor working at ICER, ran through some of the Alaska population findings that have emerged for years. Within the factors affecting migration from rural to urban areas, or between rural areas and rural areas, between reliance on and success with subsistence food harvests, availability of water and sewer service, rates of violent crime, past research has found. Within urban Alaska, there are also patterns. Some of the most recent analysis reveals that Lawson Inc., Alaska's largest city, appears to be driven by military personnel reductions. And it's good that there's fewer military at fucking J-Bear, the shithole known as J-Bear, according to a new analysis in Alaska Economic Trends. Alaska Economic Trends are run by the Gottsteins. Probably, right? It's probably run by the fucking Gottsteins, right? The monthly magazine of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development's Research Division. The outflow of Anchorage residents over the last 14 years has largely been driven by reductions at J-Bear, that analysis found. The combined population of war criminals from Elmendorf and Fort Rich lost over 2,600 people from 2010 to 2023, more than Anchorage's overall loss of 2,173 people during the same period, according to analysis. Meanwhile, Alaska's long-term overall demographic outlook appears dim. State demographers in their most recent forecasts are predicting a population decline by mid-century that is driven by outmigration, reduced birth rates, and the aging of residents. Zionist terrorist Peltola, during a break in the session, said she was inspired to help organize the event because of widespread concerns about Alaska's dwindling work-age population. So there are less people for her to scheme on up here, man. Because they're all moving to Seattle, son. Or Portland. But by the way, fuck Portland. Seattle's way better. Portland's kind of a fucking hippy-dippy shithole. And we all know Seattle's better. During her 2 years in office and throughout her travels and discussions with people from different communities, industries, and sectors, she heard a similar refrain about Alaska's demographic trends. Everyone is concerned about out-migration and not enough people in the employment pool to draw from, she said. I don't know why I'm doing a fucking Shlomo voice on her, but it is what it is. Beyond state residents and in-state residents and new arrivals who used to be attracted to Alaska, Alaska has long depended on foreign workers who have special authorizations known as J-1 visas that allow them to be employed in seasonal industries, such as the canneries, right? Now, the need for workers with J-1 visas appears to be more acute, and employers are seeking such workers even for winter duty. She addressed that issue in her opening remarks. We need J-1 visas like nobody's business because we need foreign people to come and help us fill our sectors. I don't know, I'm doing a Russian accent. She said in her opening remarks. I just want to make her sound crazy. That's why. Visas under the J-1 program and another program called H-2 have long been used to fill seasonal jobs like seafood and tourism, the canneries, right? Peltola's main election opponent, Republican Nick Begich, has attacked the Biden-Harris, the Holocaust-Harris, and Genocide Joe administration over immigration policies and tied Peltola to those policies because they're both xenophobes. His campaign did not immediately provide information on his views about reversing Alaska's continued outmigration because he doesn't have a plan. However, the RNC on Thursday criticized Peltola's comments about J-1 visa workers in Alaska. No way in the Mary Peltola aiding bed Joe Biden Harris unleashing this historic border crisis. Peltola thinks foreigners should fill Alaska jobs, not Americans. National Republican Congressional Committee spokesperson Ben Peterson said in an emailed statement. So fucking Shabaskoy, Global Shlomo, Yereth Rosen doesn't even confront either of those two comments. But, I mean, we know what kind of person Yereth Rosen is. She's a subversive. Yeah, but Alaskans are moving out. And even Global Shlomo, Yereth Rosen, acknowledges that. And we all know liberals are idiots. And we're an anti-liberal channel. And I'll provide receipts on all of these here. But I'll show you where Alaskans are moving if Google Earth will speed up, because Google Earth... GCI is a shitty internet company, by the way. Don't get GCI. By the way, don't even go to Alaska. Alaska's a shithole. Alaska demographers... So this is from James Brooks, Alaska Beacon. Alaska demographers predict population drop. A switch from prior forecasts. This is from July 2024, like 5 to 7 months ago, eh? So Alaska's population is set to significantly decline by 2050, according to a new forecast from the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And there's Benson. I know where that is. That's next to Safeway. That's the bridge across Benson. That's Wells Fargo. That's a Matson truck delivering freight to Safeway. They're the Chugach Mountains. I know exactly where that is. And by the way, so the department publishes, so Alaska's population is set to significantly decline by 2050 according to a new forecast from the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce. The department publishes population forecasts every 2 years, and the new document estimates the state will drop by nearly 2% before 2050. This prediction, which reverses decades of optimistic forecasts by the department, again, Alaska's a bunch of idiots, is based upon more than a decade of outmigration, rising death rates, and falling birth rates. The state's forecast is critical for urban planners and others who need to calculate it, demand for schools, transportation, utilities, and commerce. State demographer David Howell said the department bases its forecast on a 30-year average and extends current trends into the future. The results in the state's population falling from 736,812 to 722,806 residents by 2050. We've now had 11 years straight of net outmigration, of negative net migration. It's just pushed that 30-year average down enough that our natural increase, which is just births minus deaths, can't make up for the losses in net migration once we get about 10 years out in the projected period. Young Americans who tend to be more mobile are more likely to be the people who move into the state. With fewer people moving into the state's average age is rising, which means fewer new births. By the mid-2030s, our baby boomer population is really starting to hit these older ages, and so we're seeing not only births declining, but also deaths increasing. So those two things come together, which ends up leading to population losses, Howell says. For at least 2.5 decades, the department has expected Alaska's population to grow significantly. In 1998, for example, the Department of Labor expected the state would have more than 843,000 residents by 2018. In reality, the figure was 738,000 that year. The department's forecasts have grown more pessimistic with each new forecast since 2007, and this year's is the first to predict a long-term decline. A decline isn't certain. The forecast is based upon existing trends and could be altered by unforeseen circumstances such as a new oil boom on the North Slope or the arrival of climate change refugees in large numbers, but Howell said that demographers don't see signs of a large change in trends at the moment. We could have big swings in migration, oil booms, busts, that sort of thing, but if we average out to be that 30-year average, then the decline is the most likely scenario. A missed estimate on birth rates could cause a steeper decline, and I think they're doing that. I think they're misestimating birth rates. I think more people are moving to Seattle to have families instead of staying in Anchorage. The forecast keeps Alaska at an estimate of 1.9 child per woman, currently the third highest in the country. Howell said the state has always had a higher birth rate than the national average because they don't know what birth control is up here, and declines in that area have seemed to bottom out, but it's hard to say what will happen going forward. Population declines wouldn't be evenly spread across the state, the forecast indicates. Southwest Alaska, so like Dillingham, Bethel, Kotlik, that area, Togiak, where the average age is relatively low, continues to have more births and deaths and outmigration through 2050. The Matsu Valley, the Matsu Borough, the shithole where Wasilla is forecast to continue growing in population. But Southeast Alaska, which is already older on average than the rest of the state, is expected to lose significantly more population than the state as a whole, as are communities along the Gulf Coast, Seward, Valdez, Cordova, in the interior, Fairbanks, Delta Junction, North Pole, as well as Anchorage in South Central Alaska. For example, Wrangell in Southeast Alaska is expected to drop from 2,000 residents to fewer than 1,400 residents. The population decline also would change the state's demographic mix. The forecast indicates Alaska would become less white. The portion of Alaska natives would rise from about 22% to 25%, in part because Alaska natives move out of the state less frequently than white residents do. And they're using, obviously, the U.S. definition of white, which includes people from Europe, North Africa, Western Asia, Eastern Europe, of that nature, people of that nature. Howell said the number of Alaska natives over 65 years old is set to rise significantly. The forecast expects a 131% increase between 2020 and 2050. So Alaska's in deep kimchi in terms of losing population. Alaska's in deep, deep kimchi. Alaska's in deep, deep kimchi, son. And I'm going to be part of that trend of Alaskans moving out. I'm going to make Alaska pay. And this is from Yarith Rosen, Alaska Bacon. Oy vey. Alaska's working age population has declined since 2013 peak, and recovery appears dim. So, Alaska's working population peaked 10 years ago, and the rate of loss since then has been nearly the highest among all U.S. states, according to the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development. The details are described in the lead article in the March issue of Alaska Economic Trends, the monthly magazine produced by the department's Research and Analysis section. The number of Alaskans between 18 and 64 years old reached its peak in 2013 at 479,000, but by 2022 has fallen to 449,000. So the article written by Eric Sandberg, a state demographer. Alaska's 5.4 population loss and working age adults from 2013 to 2021 is eclipsed only by the 8% loss in West Virginia and the 6% loss in Wyoming, the article said. So people are leaving the shithole states and they're moving to Washington, California, and Oregon. That's what I get from this article. There are 3 reasons for the Alaska's decline, according to the article: outmigration, the aging nature of Alaska's population, and the large number of deaths from the COVID-19 pandemic, aka the Chinese virus pandemic, the Kung Flu. Alaska has had 10 consecutive years of more people leaving the state than moving into it, the longest stretch since such records began after World War II. Alaska is driven in large part by the movement of the boomer generation, which dominated the working age population in 1990 into retirement, the article said. In 2020, for the first time, there were more Alaskans moving into retirement age than moving into adulthood, it said. Death has been the biggest factor in the population decline of working age Alaskans over the past 2 years. Not all deaths in those pandemic years were specifically from the Chinese virus, but the number of deaths for the age group was about 40% higher than pre-pandemic years, the article said. Deaths in Alaska's working age population totaled 2,000 in 2021 and 2,400 last year, the article said. For context, the total decline in the 18 to 64-year-old population from all causes was 4,300 from 2021 to 2022. Alaska's working age population is likely to keep declining through 2030, the article concludes, and prospects for returning to 2013 peaks appear dim. Unless the state's net migration rate is higher in the next 30 years than the previous 30, Alaska will struggle in the long term to regain its peak 2013 working age population. Yeah, so no one wants to live in Alaska. Everybody's moving to Washington and Oregon. Some dumbass cuck-conservatives are moving to fucking Florida and Texas because they're fucking idiots. So, yeah. And there we go. There's downtown Anchorage. Again, I just proved Alaska's a fucking shithole and nobody wants to fucking live here. And even fucking globalist Yarith Rosen agrees with me. By the way, her daughter went to school with my brother at Rogers Park in grade school. So, yeah, here we go. Alaska's a shithole. Nobody wants to live here. Everybody's moving to Washington and Oregon. So there you go.